Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this episode of Flight Test Tales from the Dark Side deals with flying the Edwards T-38s out in what is typically known as the real world. Now, I learned to fly at Vance Air Force Base, Enid, Oklahoma, Enid by the Sea as we called it, and we're young, inexperienced pilots. We've got lots of levels of supervision, and they keep a pretty tight rein on you as they need to. These are very high-performance aircraft, and we're a bunch of kids having a good time. So they got to keep a tight leash on us. But one of the nice things about it is, later on the program, you get a little more experience, and you go cross-country. It was fun to go cross-country being based at Vance because that's when things kind of loosened up a little bit. You had a little more freedom, and you were away from the 12 levels of supervision that were constantly looking down your neck. So going cross country was kind of fun. Now at Edwards, going cross country was just the opposite. Edwards, back in the 70s and before, and maybe still is, I don't know, but it was a real flying club. As long as you didn't break anything, you didn't get in trouble. You broke something, bent an aircraft, yeah, then you got in trouble. But as long as you kept your nose clean, you did okay. If you wanted to take off a 38, full afterburner, clean it up, keep it in afterburner, hit 500 knots at the end of the runway and pull up into a near vertical burner climb and see what 30,000 feet per minute rate of climb would get you, that was fun. Now, in the training command, they did burner climbs too, back when I was a student, but they were started at 10,000 feet. And you don't really see the true experience of a burner climb from 10,000 feet. I mean, it's impressive. It's very impressive, but when you start right from the ground, you are going up so fast that you start to think, man, am I going to be able to stop? Am I just going to go out into space? Because you're going fast. And if you're on a test mission and you're coming back and you're coming down initial into the break at 500 knots, that's fine. This was a performance evaluation way back when, between the 15 and the 16, when they were still brand new aircraft. I'm in the 38. You can't obviously see it because I'm in it taking the picture. And I was the area chase, and we had the F4 as the safety chase there. And the two aircraft kind of did their thing. Now, on occasion, we had a need to leave the confines of the flying club at Edwards and go out into the real world. Now, we had a couple of T-38s that were very specifically configured. If you notice this T-38, the pitot boom is just a little different. Actually, you can't even see the entire pitot boom in this picture, but that pitot boom is approximately 15 feet long with a nice long stripe. And on it, it has what's known as a YAPS head, yaw and pitch sensors. Now, this was used as a pacing aircraft, and it was used to get flight test data, and it was used to calibrate airspeed on the aircraft under test. Now, back then, technology wasn't as sophisticated. Under the pilot's seat, you typically had the survival kit. Well, in this aircraft, you didn't have a survival kit. It was actually instruments and then 8mm cameras down there that were taking pictures of the instruments. So you would start the cameras rolling on a test point, and they would come back, and you would develop them, and you would be able to see exactly what the airspeed, altitude, all this indications were. Now, because of these aircraft being specially configured like that, they didn't have any navigation equipment. All I had in that aircraft was an attitude indicator and essentially an HSI, horizontal situation indicator, that was essentially just a compass. Nothing worked. So if we went somewhere with this aircraft outside of Edwards, you had to go as a two-ship. And we had to take one of these pacers out to Navy Dallas in Texas to get an upgraded instrumentation system on board the aircraft. So what we did was we flew cross country because I couldn't technically or legally navigate. So we like to stop. We didn't have the range to get all the way from Edwards to Texas. The T-38's great aircraft, not long legs. So we would stop at intermediate stop placing to get fuel, refuel, and go on. Now, it was always kind of best to stop at ATC bases because if you had any maintenance issues, they could readily take care of you. Now, this is a copy of my T-38 flight manual that I still had, and because of a little issue we had when we landed at Williams Air Force Base, I went back and looked at it. And you know, some aircraft have what's known as a demonstrated crosswind limit. That happens to be the crosswind that the test pilot found one day, went up and flying, thought it was pretty representative of the capabilities of the aircraft. You know, you're getting the most the aircraft can handle in this crosswind. So that would go in the book as demonstrated. It's not really a limit. It's just shown that, hey, in this crosswind, it was determined that the aircraft could be safely landed. But, you know, I went through this manual, and it's been a few years, like about 45, and I could find virtually no reference to crosswind landing other than a few techniques. But that's not unusual, because the training command has these books, and this is one for the T-38. It's called Advanced Flying Jet. And what the training command does is they are very specific on limitations and procedures. They typically own the T-38s. Only a few other commands actually operate them very much. And in this book, they have crosswind limitations. Solo student 15 knots, IP or pilot 25 knots. Okay, fine. Well, I was in Systems Command, and those limits apply to Training Command. So we go into Williams, we land. I taxi the T-38 up to parking. We come in as a two-ship. We did a formation landing, and we come in as a two-ship, and I taxi into parking, and as I'm being guided in, all of a sudden, the airman guiding me in just drops his wands. And so I stop, and he takes and he points at the nose. And I kind of, you know, shake my head, yeah, whatever, you know, and then he starts guiding me in again. And when we come to a stop, he goes, "What happened to your pitot boom?" And I said, "Well, I got caught in the hangar door and stretched out a little bit." And then I told him, you know, it's a Pacer aircraft. Well, about that time, as we're getting out of the airplane, okay, we got our Systems Command patches. We have our orange flight suits, which should have been a bit of a giveaway. But the safety officer comes strutting up to us and says, "You know, Williams has been closed all day." And I go, "Really? We didn't see any notification that it was closed." He says, "Well, the crosswinds are out of limits." And I go, "Really?" I go, "No, they're not." And he goes, "Well, yes, they are. They're over 25 knots." And I point to the Systems Command patch, and I said, "Well, they may be out of limits for Training Command, but they're not out of limits for Systems Command." And, you know, we grew up in the Training Command. We know that, but we don't have those restrictions, and we have a little more leeway to operate. And I've landed the T-38 in winds, crosswinds exceeding 40 knots, and it handles very well. You land in a crab, and you touch down level, because if you try to do a slip in a high-performance swept-wing aircraft, you develop high rates of descent, and that's just not a good thing. So you land in a crab, and you touch down, and the nose straightens out, and they determine it's no more loads than any other way of landing, and it's a lot safer. So it works quite well. You touch down in a crab, the nose just comes around the center line, and you lower it, and away you go. Now, I had another mission. I'm coming out of Edwards, and I'm going to support the B-1 out in the Pacific Test Range. Now, they had me fly out to Vandenberg, and I was supposed to fly in there and wait for the B-1 to be ready for me. So I come in, and I land. Well, I found out that the B-1 was ready for me as I walked into base operations, and so I turned around and came right back out. Now, parked next to me was a Training Command T-38, and back at the time, they had a horrible paint job. They looked like chalking white paint that you'd find on a house, and it was just absolutely gross. And there was an instructor there with a student, and of course, you know, he's going through the checklist there. I've got a photographer in the back seat. We go in, and they say, "Turn around, come back." But he looks at me, and we had the NASA paint job at the time. We didn't have the blue stripe, but we had, I think it was polyurethane paint, and it just looked beautiful. And he stops me and says, "Why does your aircraft look so nice?" And I said, "Well, we just have our crew chiefs wash them every day." And of course, he's going there with the student. We hop in, and the procedure kind of at Edwards was, use the checklist as a backup, but it's kind of like starting your car. You went across, you turn the shiny switches on, you know what you need to do, and so you got through the procedure pretty quickly, especially if a very expensive test aircraft was waiting for you. Well, I decided that just for fun, I was going to give them a little demonstration of how we kind of did things different out at Edwards. Now, obviously, I didn't fly the F-22. It didn't exist back when I was flying. And of course, a vertical takeoff, there's no footage of anything that I did. So, of course, I have total plausible deniability. But I executed a pretty nice takeoff. He was actually, as I was rolling down the runway, he was just taxiing off. So he and a student got a nice display of the capability of the T-38. And then, I turned on over and went out in the Pacific Test Range, got radar vectored to the B-1, and we did the test mission, which was it was a flare jettison test mission where the photographer was there, and we're just supposed to watch how, make sure the flares came out properly without coming back and hitting the aircraft or stuff like that. Now, another time I was senior Stanivel pilot at the Air Force Flight Test Center in the T-38. And a couple of the very high-ranking people on base liked to have me go with them because if they needed a check ride, I could take care of that. If they wanted to do touch and goes, I could take care of that. So when we would go somewhere else, of course, we had to play by the rules. Now, we were going up to the Seattle area, and we were going into a military base up there. And the pilot I was flying with liked to fly down initial at 400 knots. Our normal initial speed was 300. He liked to go a little faster because when he did the pitch out, he liked to see the wingtip vortices come off the wingtips. So he did that for fun. So we hit the brake. We're in the pitch out. And of course, his call sign is a very low number, which should have been an indication to tower. But we're starting around the final turn. And we get a call, Rick, and I'm going to give the full call sign, Rick such and such, call tower when you get into base ops. And I said, oh, crap. And he just kind of laughed. We came in, we landed, we're walking into base ops. We get into base ops, and there is a Airman 2 striper there holding the phone full length at attention, holding a salute, and going, sir, it's for you, sir. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So he goes over, picks up the phone, goes, yeah. Oh, no problem. No, that's fine. Don't worry about it. No problem. And he hangs up the phone. He comes walking up to me, and he's got this little grin on his face. And I'm going, they found out who you were, huh? And he goes, well, I don't know, but they were very respectful, and they just thought it looked a little faster than normal. And I told him, yeah, it was fine. So away that little issue went. And I happened to mention, I said, well, if they'd have been calling about me, and he said right away, you would have been in a lot of trouble. So yes, rank does have its privileges, and you have to be careful when you get out of the flying club. But the T-38 was just an exceptionally fun aircraft to fly. And the nice thing about flying it in like the Systems Command, and I'm sure TAC, when they used them for fighter lead-in, did the same thing. We got to see the performance of this aircraft, high speed, low altitude, and it's just an amazing aircraft. Unfortunately, a lot of the pilots who go through the program never get to witness the full capability of this aircraft. And that's my license plate on my vet. I enjoyed this aircraft. It's one of the two. This one, the 727 and the 777 are some of my favorite aircraft. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thanks for watching.